He's Jay Bilas, ESPN college basketball analyst, joining us on the program. Jay, if I said the reason for this year's Final Four is none, an anomaly, older players, NIL hurting the bigger programs, three-point shot, or other?
I'd say it would be more anomaly, Dan, that even though there's some firsts in this year's Final Four, it's the first time since 79 when they went to seeding that there's not a 1, 2, or 3 seed in the Final Four. But at the same time, we've got a 4, 2 5s, and a 9. If you go back to 2011, we had a 3, a 4, 9, and an 11. And so, I mean, the seed numbers were higher that year. We don't have a double-digit seed this year. Florida Atlantic won 30-some games in the regular season. They were ranked in the top 25. UConn was ranked number 1 at one point in the season in late November. It's not like this is some shocking Final Four. We just have some first-timers. And we didn't have any knockout punch great teams this year, but we've had years like that before.
San Diego State, the only Final Four team that was ranked preseason top 25, and they were 19th. And I know that preseason rankings are always difficult because you're not quite sure team matures or player, they mesh or somebody gets hurt, whatever it might be. But still, that's pretty shocking.
Yes and no. I mean, San Diego State's not allowed to lose. So they're ranked. They got beat by Arizona when Arizona was a top-ranked team all year long. They got beat by Arizona and Maui, and then they lose a couple of conference games. They've lost 5 games overall. They're not allowed to lose in the Mountain West. And so you don't get a lot of respect from voters when you lose. And UConn went on a 6-game slide, which, was kind of hard to explain. But, in November, everybody thought they were the best team.
Yeah.
And they go on that slide, and then they picked it back up again. And at the beginning of the tournament, when the bracket came out, that was the first thing I said was like, UConn. I mean, UConn's gonna win this thing. And then I thought about it longer and I said, well, maybe Arizona. And then Arizona got bounced in the first round. But that just went to sort of the no knockout punch teams. We had a bunch of really good teams, but nobody was great, was truly great. But and people say that's what they want. They want the little guy to have a chance, which it does every year. Like there's nothing more fair than the NCAA tournament. Everybody gets a fair shot to get in. All you have to do is win your automatic bid, which is against your peers. And it's done in almost every conference. I think it is every conference now. It's done via tournament. And so the truth is everybody is in the NCAA tournament. All they have to do is win their automatic bid and they get in. And then they take the next best teams after that, and that's where the argument comes in: is what does best teams mean after that?
Is there a growing philosophy of not focusing on the one and done? Everybody wants a great player. I mean, we only had one big time freshman, Brandon Miller with Alabama, but is that an anomaly that there wasn't that impactful player, the freshman?
No, I mean, see what I think is happening is we've always had older players in the overwhelming majority of teams because very few teams could get one and dones, and certainly very few could get enough of them to rely upon them. So Duke was doing it. Kentucky started doing it when John Calipari got there in 2010. But then you'd see other big programs. North Carolina would take, one, maybe two, and blend them in with older guys. But then the narrative starts if a one and done team loses, see, you can't win with freshmen. Well, since 2010, 2 of the teams that have won the most have been Duke and Kentucky, and they did it largely with freshmen. The transfer portal came in, the NCAA put in this transfer portal, and there seems to be a shift now that you're going to go, okay, why not take an older guy with experience for 2 years than take a younger guy for 2 years? And so you're seeing a little more of that and a little less reliance on freshmen right now. I don't know how it's going to shake out. John Calipari, and again, I haven't talked. We may have talked about this earlier. I haven't talked to Cal about this, so I don't know what he thinks. But from my seat, it looked like he was trying to get ahead of the transfer portal, started taking some transfers, and he's not as talented. And next year he's got a number 1 recruiting class coming in. I don't know if it'll shift back or it'll be a combination. But a lot of coaches are saying, hey, why not take the older guys, get experienced guys and and have them for a couple years and when they're older instead of having for a couple years when they're younger, and you have to train them in everything.
He's Jay Bilas, ESPN college basketball analyst. When are we going to see players go from high school to the pros again?
As soon as the NBA changes the collective bargaining agreement, and it's going to badly hurt college basketball. If you look back over the last, I think the one and done rule came in 2007, something like that. And we've had you have a hard time convincing me, or I think any other reasonable basketball person, that the college game is better without Kevin Durant and Kevin Love and Derrick Rose and Brandon Miller, you name it. The game, or Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson carried the sport for an entire year and was the biggest deal in the game. And if they just immediately go to the NBA, or we see more of these guys go to Overtime Elite or the G League Ignite, of course it's going to hurt college basketball. But it'll still be really good, but it won't be as compelling. There's no way.
Can NIL offset that? If I'm, 10th, 15th best player, could I get, this truckload of money for 1 year, one and done?
Yes. I mean, we're going to see guys stay longer. I mean, we're already seeing it. We're seeing guys come back that otherwise would have gone and tried the NBA, maybe a second round pick or a late first, whatever, that are coming back for another year. They're using their COVID year, fifth year, whatever it is. And you will see one and done is never going to go away, because you're always going to have guys that will come in to college, they'll blow up, and they'll leave after a year. So we're never going to be done with one and done. It's always going to exist as long as there's freedom in America. But you're going to lose the top ranked prospects, and over the course of 4 years, you lose 5 guys a year. That's first, second, third, and fourth team All-America. And so it's certainly going to hurt the product overall. And I'm not sure the NCAA actually gets that. There's still this clutching of pearls by NCAA administrators that say, if you don't want to be Bill Bradley or Shane Battier, we don't want you at all. And I think that's very short-sighted, not only for the business, but if you really believe in education, for the benefit of young people to come, even if it's only for a year or two, to establish a relationship with an institution of higher learning where they're actually more likely to come back.
Brandon Miller no-showed in the tournament. Does that affect his NBA stock, in your opinion?
I don't think so. I mean, he had an injury. He's dealing with a groin injury. So I don't think that's a big deal at all. He established a body of work where everybody knows he's the real deal. So I'm not sure that's a big issue. And even if somebody at number 3 said, well, he didn't play well in the tournament, and they said, we're going to take somebody else, then he'd go at number 4.
Who's your Cinderella now?
Florida Atlantic. I mean, they're really good, and they've been good all year. I mean, the problem in evaluating a team like Florida Atlantic is they won, I can't remember how many games they won during the regular season, whether it was 29 or 30. I think it's 31 because they have a chance to win 37 if they win out. So 31 regular season games, but only 6 of them were against the top 100. Mm-hmm. And they beat Florida. They lost Ole Miss by 13, but they're legit. They just play in a conference that doesn't provide them with a lot of high profile games. But man, when they out rebounded Kansas State 44-22, and they're a pretty small team outside of their center, who's 7'1", Vladimir Golden. They get their noses dirty, man. Those guys are good players, and they're tough, and they're athletic, and they can score. So I don't put it past them to get to the final.
What would you say to somebody who has picked the Final Four correctly?
I would say they were either flipping a coin, or they had family members that live in Boca Raton or San Diego. I think what is it, like 0.1% of all the brackets had the Final Four right. I can't imagine having picked that on Sunday and felt good about it.
Well, we have one of the Danettes' wives picked all 4. Got all.
There you go.
Yeah, all 4 Final Four, and she breaks down a lot of tape. Seton, is that right?
A lot of tape.
Yeah. Shows. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
found value in the way they run that screen for the screener action.
Yeah.
And how they switch ball screen action. That's got. I missed that.
I heard her mumbling about catch and shoot the other day, and I was just like, wow, she's really in it.
Yeah. I like it. Any rule changes do you think are coming for college basketball in the offseason?
I doubt it. I mean, I'm no longer on the competition committee, which has made my life so much better. And now I can just watch the games without feeling any responsibility for officiating issues. But there needs to be a change in the charge block rule. It's a mess and a joke. And we need to go to quarters, but we're not going to because there's too much money in halves with commercial inventory. And I think the game needs to be, we need to address the overt physicality in the game, but we're not going to because all the checks are rolling in, and it requires too much for the system to handle, and the system's not set up to react to what is going on in the game. We're going to have to wait until there's another crisis like there was 10 years ago.
Do you think in our lifetime we'll see dimensions of the court or the height of the basket change?
I don't think so. I don't think there's any need for it. One, the cost would be enormous on all these different levels, but I don't see the need for that.
What about NBA?
I definitely don't see a need for that. I think the game is fine. It does need, the NBA has done the best job. The NBA and FIBA have done great jobs of changing as the players change. Most of the innovations come from players and their ability to do different things. And the NBA, I think if college went to the NBA's rules where they had a defensive 3 seconds, and the charge rule was backed up on a secondary defender to the gather instead of when the offensive player leaves the floor. So as a secondary defender, as you can slide underneath the guy that's won a path to the basket. Yeah. And as long as you get there by the time his toe lifts off the ground, you're committed by the time your foot hits the floor, but not by the time you leave the floor. And the NBA is a much cleaner, better game, and it's more entertaining. It's higher scoring. It's fun. Like Reese Davis said this recently, he said basketball is supposed to be an offensive game with a defensive component. And most every game that we covet, the offense is featured and the defense has to do something extraordinary to stop the offense, whether it's football or the NBA. And in college, all we talk about is defense and physicality. And it shouldn't be that way. Like the game's way more physical. And I'd love to play now because I could just bully better players. Before you couldn't do that. And people thought it was physical back in the 80s. It wasn't physical like today. It was just there were no flagrant fouls. So when you fouled somebody, you put them into the wood and got your money's worth. Now that's all cleaned up because of the flagrant foul rule. But the general contact in games is magnified. It's so much more than it used to be.
I keep telling people the best shooter in college basketball plays at Iowa.
Caitlin Clark?
Yes.
Oh, it's not close. She's the most exciting player in the game right now, and has been for a couple of years. And that 40-point triple-double she had yesterday, and that's the thing. Like you watch the women's games, and they don't allow them to grab and hold and chuck cutters and bully each other. It's a cleaner, better game. And look, I love college basketball, but some of these games are unwatchable. And I think we could do a better job. Like the officials do a really good job, but it's their bosses that don't do a good job. And until they're told that they need to call this and call it consistently, and it changes. Like some of these officials will call a great game when two teams don't play that style of basketball. But when you have teams that do play this overtly physical style, they allow it and say, well, it's the way they play. No, you don't like cops on the side of the road. Don't say, well, I can't give a ticket for that because that's just the way they drive. No. Like, and the way you stop people from speeding is you give tickets out and they stop speeding. If you just sit there, they're going to continue to speed. And it's the same thing with officiating.
Great to talk to you. Thanks as always, Jay.
Always, Dan. Enjoyed it.
That's Jay Bilas, college basketball analyst. Yeah, he loved UConn, and then all of a sudden he said, no, I'm going to pick Arizona. And then we all scrambled with our brackets. And then we all cursed Jay Bilas when Arizona bowed out.